Hey guys, it's Sasha. The UK economy shrank by 0.5% in July, which was worse than the 0.2% drop that was forecasted by analysts. And the media, of course, got very excited because look, it's the biggest drop in 7 months. But just 1 month ago, the same media said the UK economy grows faster than expected after a surprisingly strong June. The truth is that the UK economy is not growing fast and it is not collapsing either. It has been completely flat and stagnant for the last 2 years, going absolutely nowhere. Production output fell by 0.7% in July after going up 1.8% in June. But again, look at this chart. UK production is also going nowhere. Construction is doing worse than it did 5 years ago in 2018 and in 2019. It's the light blue line on this chart. The purple line is the repair and maintenance line. So I guess whatever construction they did before is crumbling a little. But going back to UK GDP, the UK government sat around and had a little think on how to solve the problem of the UK economy doing really badly. And they came up with a radical new taxation system, a master plan of how to attract global companies and new tech startups to the UK, the biggest ever investment in infrastructure, and a new transport hub connecting the Northwest to power the UK into the future. No, they didn't do any of those things. No, because that would actually require having brains and, doing work, which is difficult. Now, instead, the government just fudged the numbers. I am not even kidding. Here is the UK GDP chart from last month, from 1 month ago. And here is the same chart from this month's report. Notice anything different? Yep, they've added this light blue line called the Indicative Blue Book 2023 data, because the UK government published this thing called the Blue Book 2023. And this book is going to update the methodology behind how UK GDP is calculated, because the old way showed numbers that weren't good enough. You see, the old data said that UK's economy is doing worse now than it did back in 2019. So the accountants at the Office of National Statistics worked their magic and changed the way that GDP is calculated so that the light blue line goes higher. The absolute miracle in this new way of calculating GDP is that it doesn't seem to affect anything at all before COVID. This particular way of doing maths only magics numbers when you need them, from the moment COVID arrives and after Brexit happens, but not before. And you might be wondering what it is that they actually changed. Well, it's a mystery hidden inside a conundrum, shrouded by veil of uncertainty and obscured by an ether of the unknown. You can read the official explanation from the Office of National Statistics on their website. I'm going to put a link in the description just below this affiliate link to Webull that gives you 4 free shares worth up to $2,000 each for opening an account, making a deposit and completing a trade. And Webull are the sponsors of today's video. Webull is one of the biggest investing brokers in the world who just opened up in the UK. There is no commission at all in the first 90 days, and after that, the commission is just 2.5 basis points. That's 0.025%. So if you buy $1,000 worth of stock, the commission is just 25 cents. And to trade US stocks, you have to pay the foreign exchange fee, which is 0.35%, but unlike some other brokers, you don't have to pay that every time. You can convert your money into dollars and keep it in dollars on the platform as long as you want, so that foreign exchange fee is not as much of a deal. And here is the best bit. Webull offers pre-market and after-hours trading. So if you've been jealous of people in the US being able to trade all day long, you can now buy and sell stocks on Webull from 9 AM UK time to 1 AM. Remember, Webull offers up to 4 free shares just for opening an account, making a deposit, and making a trade in the first 30 days. So why not let Webull pay you to try them out? Remember, the link is in the description, and as always, remember that your capital is at risk. So how did the UK government fudge the numbers? Well, if you read through all of the mumbo jumbo, the biggest piece seems to be the impact of globalization. This is important for understanding the impact of increasingly complex global supply chains and geographic fragmentation of manufacturing. Customs declaration data measure physical movements across the UK border effectively, and in most cases, this is correlated well with a change in economic ownership. However, there are circumstances where where it will capture a physical import or export of goods, but there is no change in economic ownership. There will also be cases where it will miss a transaction entirely if it does not cross a UK border. So to measure UK GDP more accurately, these accountants have realized that when UK companies do businesses abroad, which now includes Europe, and a whole lot of UK companies just happen to do a lot of their business in Europe where, the physical supply and the location of goods is abroad, and the actual people working and the entities working and paying taxes are all abroad, they're working abroad, they're paying those taxes abroad. The benefit of that entire thing should of course be counted to the UK GDP. The GDP, by the way, according to the Office of National Statistics themselves, is the total value of output in the economic territory. And the economic territory is defined as Great Britain and Northern Ireland, any free zones under UK customs control, and the UK national airspace and territorial waters. But I guess now UK territories also include random factories in Vietnam. If you use this way of accounting, then any country where a lot of the production, a lot of the process in the way that things are produced, delivered, sold, made is outsourced to other countries, then that country that is outsourcing would naturally see a bump to their GDP. They begin attributing some of those items to their own domestic gross product, because you are attributing the GDP of other countries to yourself. And they only showed this chart for 1 month and 1 month only in this report, because from next month this data is going to be incorporated into all future reporting so that we can all pretend that things are going great and that in fact they were going great when we didn't really feel like it. So great in fact that the new data shows wages continue growing at a record rate and still accelerating, which is now fueling a worsening wage price spiral, which is making the UK inflation problem a lot worse. And for the last year, I've been saying that the UK government giving outsized pay increases to public sector workers is unfortunately making the problem worse. And I got a boatload of hate for saying it. And hey, I understand, I get it, because nurses, doctors, other public sector workers, teachers, they all don't earn a huge amount of money, and they do have bills to pay, and they do need to get pay increases. But hey, perhaps I am just not a politician. I am not here to say things that perhaps you want to hear. I'm here to just call spades spades and explain what's happening. And wouldn't you know it, in the recent wage data, the light blue line is the public sector total. This is the growth in wages of the total amount of money given to the public sector. And you can see that it is a lot higher, well, than everything on the chart, but in particular, it is a lot higher in the last month than the green line, which is the public sector regular one. And that's because this summer, the UK government gave staff in the NHS and in the civil service 2 one-off payments worth around £2,000. And yes, I am aware that making 2 one-off payments in the space of 2 months is a ridiculous oxymoron. And at the end of last week, I also just happened to mention that the triple lock on UK pensions is not only unsustainable, but is now actively driving inflation. And it's funny because this just keeps happening at the moment. But on Monday morning, the UK government announced that they're planning to get rid of the triple lock. Interesting timing, given that absolutely nobody in the government has talked about it for years. Nobody in the media happened to mention it. All the media, by the way, and every analyst is saying also at the same time that the UK will do one more rate hike at the end of the September meeting, and that will be that. Inflation will be conquered. It is done and dusted. We're through the worst of it. It is now going to go to 0 by Christmas. Inflation is completely finished. There is no more need for increases. And I thought for a moment that perhaps I woke up in an alternative universe, in a parallel world where the data is different. So I went and checked, but no. UK inflation is still at 6.8%, or 6.4% if you include housing in the latest data. While goods inflation has fallen, services inflation is actually still growing because wages are growing. And while inflation is at 6.8%, the interest rate is at 5.25%. So even after that one extra increase, it's going to sit at 5.5%, significantly below the level of inflation. And I mean, well, anything could happen, but every economic theory book that you would ever read will tell you that inflation running hot and still sitting substantially above the Bank of England base rate will not usually just drop down all by itself without the rate going higher or other measures being applied, especially when we're seeing upward pressure on inflation over the next 6 to 12 months instead of downward as everyone seems to be reporting, as fixed-term mortgages rates run out and people's mortgages go up by 70 to 100%. And the wages at the same time are growing at the fastest rate since that data started being collected. The real problem is that too many of these analysts and people in the UK government just look over at what's happening in the United States and assume that the same exact thing will just miraculously happen here, even though the two countries and the two economies and the circumstances and everything have major differences, and the US economy just happens to be booming while the UK economy is stagnant at best. I was very confused when the UK government said that there was no inflation problem at all in 2021. There was nothing at all that anyone should worry about. It's all going to be fine. When it clearly wasn't, and there was obviously a massive fuck off problem that I was talking about on this channel. And I'm equally confused now because, well, sure, anything could happen. Crazy things do happen. Inflation could go down, I guess. But the data says that it's now very sticky and it's going to take a lot more than just one more rate hike and nothing else to get rid of it. And the problem is that UK consumers are already fucked. After this next rate hike, the median UK income will not be enough to pay median UK bills. Families up and down the country are going to be in dire straits, and this could end very badly. But the UK government have applied this policy of sticking their fingers in their ears, singing la la la, and pretending that nothing is happening. Maybe, just maybe, appointing a chancellor, the guy in charge of the country's finances, who has never actually worked in finance, wasn't the best move in the middle of the worst financial crisis in a generation. But what do I know, right? I am just a random guy on YouTube who doesn't know or understand anything. And Rishi, by the way, I know that you guys watch my videos because you just keep randomly coming out and denouncing or doing some of the things that I mention immediately after I mention them. So maybe you should just give me a call. You know, instead of launching a 2-year inquiry into what happened, it might be better to launch a 2-week project to actually try and fix things so that the country might come out of this downward spiral. Maybe, I'm not holding out too much hope, but maybe there is a small part of you that actually cares about millions of people suffering and struggling to feed their kids, struggling to heat their homes. I guess at the end of the day, you don't have any fucking idea what that actually feels like, or how it makes those people feel inside, or how those kids feel when they look up and see their mum and dad really, and I mean really, struggle, especially because your incompetence in managing the economy, your inaction throughout the whole of 2021, your inability to understand how the actions that you took would impact the economy, and your fucking up repeatedly is the reason why so many people are in the shit. The time to act is now. For the entirety of this year, the Chancellor and the UK government and you, Rishi, have sat around twiddling their thumbs, doing absolutely nothing, just hoping and praying that the problems just go away by itself. The inflation, it will go away. It's going to halve because, you know, I said so. I'm not going to do anything to make it halve. I'm just going to make an announcement at the beginning of the year that it's going to halve, and I'm just going to sit there hoping that it eventually goes that way. You need to actually do something. So stop being a useless politician. Stop saying words that don't actually mean anything. Roll up your sleeves and fix it. And if you don't know how to fix it, then get the fuck out of the kitchen and let someone who does know fix it instead.